Whatever the outcome of Brexit talks, it will be costly for the UK. That is according to the IMF. Speaking at a press conference at the UK Treasury, Managing Director Christine Lagarde said an exit from the EU without a deal will hurt the economy even more. The fund forecasts a growth rate of 1.5% for next year. That is in the event of a smooth exit. That, however, is still slower than Germany and France's economies. British Prime Minister Theresa May, in the meantime, says she won't back off her Brexit plan, with the only alternative proposed in July being a hard border with Ireland.
The only proposal that's been put forward that delivers on them not having that hard border and ensures that we don't carve up the United Kingdom is the Chequers plan.
A more disruptive departure will have a much worse outcome. Let me be clear. Compared with today's smooth single market, all the likely Brexit scenarios will have costs for the UK economy and to a lesser extent as well for the EU. The larger the impediments to trade in the new relationship, the costlier it will be.
Joining me now from Lancaster in the UK is Geraint Johnes. He's a professor of economics at Lancaster University. Professor, great to have you once again on Money Talks. Look, Theresa May unveiled her Brexit plan in July at the Prime Minister's official country residence of Chequers, hence the Chequers plan. But it says that the UK will end the free movement of people across the UK's borders, but it will abide by a common rulebook with the EU for all goods. But since then, hardline Brexiteers have been deeply divided over the plan within the Tory party. Is this plan doomed?
Hardline and softline, Azhar. It's been quite unpopular and has generated quite a lot of opposition within the Conservative Party and right across the piece in the UK. But for different reasons. Hardliners don't like it because they see it as adhering too much to the rules that the European Union imposes, and it would be imposing because outside the European Union, the United Kingdom would no longer have a say in those rules. So they don't like it for that reason. Meanwhile, those on the other side of the argument don't particularly like the Chequers agreement because that takes us too far away from the single market and it does nothing for services. And because services account for around 80% of the UK economy, that's selling a whole lot of the British economy down the river. So it's a solution that doesn't please a lot of people. That said, it is a starting point for discussions with the European Union, and we'll need to see how those discussions go.
Meanwhile, the momentum for a second referendum appears to be growing. We've had the Mayor of London, we've had football star Gary Lineker, unions all calling for a second referendum. Is it likely to happen, do you think?
It's very difficult to predict what will happen in terms of the political rollout of discussions over the next few months. It's certainly a possibility that there could be a second referendum. And the call for the second referendum has intensified as a result of people finding out that certain things about Brexit are coming to pass that are not very palatable. So the hardline Brexiteers were suggesting initially that it would be very easy to strike a free trade deal with the European Union that would satisfy all sorts of requirements. And as people are seeing that that is not coming to pass, that a lot of the reality about Brexit is a hard and rather unpleasant reality. So the calls for a second referendum, or what people are calling actually a people's vote, because the demand for this is coming from the grassroots rather than from politicians.
Let's talk about the pound for a second. It's actually been pretty resilient in the last few days to some of the headlines that have been coming out. Is that deceptive, do you think? Or do you think that if we reach March 29th, and there is no plan, there is no deal, that we're going to see the pound fall off an edge, a cliff?
Well, let's be clear, a no deal would be very bad news indeed for the UK economy, because what we would see happening would be the imposition by the European Union of tariffs on exports from the UK into the European Union. The EU would have to do that under WTO rules. And so there'd be no option for them to make special arrangements for the UK at that stage. And if it becomes harder for UK businesses to export to what is, of course, by far our major export market, then that would have adverse effects on GDP in the UK. And because our exports would be reduced, there would be a pressure on the pound to go down. That would generate inflationary pressure in the UK. And so it would be a very hard economic outcome if we were to crash out with no deal.
Very quickly, everything you've talked about is about goods. What about on the services side of the equation? What are the likelihoods of a deal on services, which are such a big component of the UK economy?
Pretty slim, unless the Chequers agreement morphs into something like membership of the single market and customs union across the piece, which would leave the hardline Brexiteers very dissatisfied, suggesting that we hadn't indeed left the European Union. There's nothing in Chequers for services.
OK, we're going to have to leave it there. Professor Geraint Johnes from Lancaster University, thank you very much.